Hi everybody, my name is Stacy Mann. I'm the literacy specialist at Underwood School. And I wanted to hop on here to just talk about a few ways that I think we can really support our kiddos in keeping a positive momentum with regards to reading and writing. So, I, too, am a parent. I have two sons. One son, Tyler, is in second grade, and one son, Jake, is in fourth grade. And so my little speech is as much as it is for you guys as it is a reminder for myself, because we are feeling it in the Mann household as well. So I sat down to think about what are my top 3 tips for parents. What can we do as parents and as educators to really support our kiddos at this time? And my top 3 things are: 1, to break it down; 2, to take a break whenever your kid needs it or whenever you need it; and then 3, the most important advice that I can give to parents and adults working with kids at home is to keep it positive all the time, but especially right now. So what I'm going to do on this talk is just break down those 3 tips for you. And then I am going to be offering an office hour where I'll be available to follow up this video with any questions or concerns that you might have. And the details on that will be included in your child's classroom email Sunday night. So the first tip is to break it down. So what does that look like for reading and writing? Breaking it down means taking the task, whatever it might be, and making it into smaller, more manageable tasks for your child, so that this one task doesn't seem as daunting or maybe even as frustrating as it originally appears when your child receives the assignment. So in my house, the area where we really need to break it down is writing. My little second grader, Tyler, as soon as he gets his writing assignment, his anxiety goes up, and then my anxiety goes up because I know that he's feeling really nervous and worried about the assignment. I was so taken aback by this that I even shared about this on my own personal social media, which I'm going to show you how I broke it down for him to make it a more positive experience. So writing is one of the hardest areas for me as a literacy coach to teach other teachers, and for teachers really to teach kids too, and for kids to learn at school. So if you're struggling with writing at home with your kid, don't be alarmed, because I'm not surprised at all. It is really, really hard to do. It's easier when we break it up. So what does breaking up a writing assignment look like? It means taking the assignment and making more opportunities for your child to be successful than they originally think when they approach the task. So for example, my son, again, who's in second grade, had to write about his favorite restaurant. He picked a restaurant that we go to often called Mandarin Cuisine. Immediately, I knew Mandarin Cuisine was going to be a hard word for him to spell, and I knew he was going to get stuck and frustrated when he approached that word. So for example, I know you're not going to be able to see this too well, but I'm going to do my best. Right here, I told him how to spell it, Mandarin Cuisine, and then right next to it, I wrote the abbreviation. And I wrote the abbreviation because I knew he was going to be writing that word many times throughout his story, and he doesn't need to spell it every time. He doesn't need to put in that work effort. So the next time he wrote it, he could just write MC, and you'll see he does that right here, MC, the next time he talks about that. Another way I broke apart the task was right here. Now, my son's in second grade. He knows that at the beginning of a sentence, there is going to be a capital letter. He also knows, and I know he knows, that I is always capitalized when it stands alone. However, when I saw him do this lowercase I let it be. I said, this is not going to make or break his writing assignment, and I know it's how he's going to start the task, so I'm going to just let it fly. Another example is right here. He was writing about his favorite food, that he eats at Mandarin cuisine, and it's Peking ravioli. So again, Peking ravioli is a really specific word, and so I chose to write that word on an index card for him and have him copy it, because it didn't really matter much if he spelled the word Peking ravioli correctly or if he just sounded it out. So I gave him the word as it was. Now, conversely, you'll see here when he's describing Peking ravioli, he says that it's doughy. Peking ravioli is doughy, and he spells that word D-O-W-Y. And I write doughy, so it's not the correct way to spell it, D-O-U-G-H-Y, but it's phonetically correct. And I wanted him to feel successful in his writing, so I chose to let it be. So those are just a few ways how you could break down the task by writing out words for your kids that they don't really need to sound out. You can also take a sentence on and take a sentence off. So what that might look like is your child writes a sentence, then you write a sentence, then you go back, you write a sentence, then your child writes a sentence. So you're sharing the pen, essentially. That's a phrase that we use in the classrooms often, sharing the pen. With reading, it might look similar to break down the task. If your child's approaching that big reading book, it might seem scary. It might make them nervous that they're going to have too many words that they're going to struggle with. So you might decide to break down the task by you reading a chapter, then your child reading a chapter, or even telling your child the word when they get to it, even though you know your child knows what that word is. So really picking and choosing the battles that you have with your child. The second tip that I have for you is taking a break when your kid needs to or when you need to. So learning right now is really hard. It's really different for your children to be learning at home than it is in the classroom. When students are in school, even when they're really engaged in a task, there are opportunities for the learning to be broken up. So, for example, during their reading workshop time, even though they might have a sustained 15 minutes of reading, during that time they might ask their teacher a question. They might turn to their neighbor at their table and say, you know, this is a really cool part of this book. They might stop and go to the bathroom, or they might even just have a conversation with their friends. But what I'm trying to convey is that the reading task is broken up for them. However, at home, that's different. We're maybe asking our kids to sit down on the couch or sit down on their bed or sit at the kitchen table and read a book. And that feels really different for kids. And it's harder for them to sustain that reading time. So maybe a suggestion would be to include a break. So setting a timer for your kid and saying you're going to read for whatever feels right for you and your child. I am a firm believer in a parent knows their child best. So you might decide what time amount feels right, setting a timer, and then saying, you know, take a zip around the kitchen and then come back and try again. Kids often do that at school. They take a zip around the building, walk up and down the stairs, and then come back and then feel more grounded and ready to learn. So doing that in the home setting as well. It also might look like knowing what your children can handle in terms of time. So for example, in the Mann household, I have learned through this time that my boys, who are really strong students at home, can only handle 30 minutes of solid work time. So we do 30 minutes on, 30 minutes off. Now, that may or may not be the appropriate amount of time to complete their task, but it's what works for them. And to be honest, I would rather have them put in a solid amount of work in a shorter amount of time than really have them trudge on for the set amount of time that they're supposed to spend on a task or to work on that task to completion. the work will get done. You can divide it up as necessary for your kids, but really listening and observing when they need to take a break. And that break can be whatever works for your family. It might be recess time outside. It might be playing a game. It might be reading a book that's a free choice. But any type of break to sort of give the mind and their body a separation from whatever the task is at hand. And then they're ready to jump right back on into it after they're done. And then the other part of the take a break is take a break when you need one as well. I also found that the 30 minutes on and the 30 minutes off works for me as mom. I was finding that my frustration was really getting high, and that taking a break with them, going on a bike ride, going on a walk around the block, taking snack, really helped me recenter and me refocus, and thus my energy returned more positive to help and support them in their tasks as well. And then the final thing, really the most important thing I think that we can do for our kids right now is to keep it positive. I'm someone who believes that kids need positive reinforcement at all times in their lives, but they need it especially right now. Right now, things are stressful and uncertain for us as adults, but also for our kiddos. Their lives have really changed. What they know to expect of school and being with their friends is very different right now. And so the best thing that I think we can do is to provide them with as much positive reinforcement as we can. And so even though a good job right now may look different than what you're usually seeing from your child, a good job is what a kid needs to hear right now. So for example, now I'll talk about my fourth grader. So for him, he's working on a reading response journal, and I read his reading response, and it was fine, but it was really, really short. And I know if he was in school, he would have wrote probably double the amount that he did. But rather than approach him and say, like, why didn't you write more? Or could you write more? Or is there anything else to say? I flipped it around and I complimented him on the points that he made in his journal. And I think that's another thing that we can really do to keep our students engaged and motivated, is to be really, really specific with our compliments to kids. So what I'm going to suggest is at the end of your tasks with your children, that you end it with a really specific compliment. So making it almost impossible for your child to be unsure of what it is that he or she did well. So for example, you may say, instead of saying, good job reading, which is really broad, you might say, today your reading expression really rocked. You really changed your voice to make it sound exactly like the characters in the story. Or you might say, wow, when you got to a tricky word, you really stuck with it. And I noticed that you tried a bunch of strategies and then you figured it out. Or with writing, you might say, look at all the details that you included from your story. I really noted how you included quotes from the story, so I knew exactly what you wanted to say. So you can see those compliments are really specific, and your children can hold on to them and know exactly what they did well and take that with them onto the next task. So I hope you find these 3 top tips helpful. And like I said, we're all in this together. I'm feeling it too. And I hope that you will join me in my open hours times, which you'll see in the follow-up email from the classroom teachers. And again, if you have any questions or concerns about your children, please reach out to me. I'm here to help. Thanks so much.